Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.Res. 515, commemorating the 90th birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama on July 6, 2025, as a day of compassion and expressing support for human rights, religious freedom, and cultural and linguistic protection of the Tibetan people. The resolution was circulated in advance, and the clerk shall designate the resolution.
H.Res. 515, commemorating the 90th birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
And I now recognize the author of the resolution, Chairman Emeritus McCaul, for any remarks that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today to speak for people whose voices have been systematically silenced by the Chinese Communist Party for many years. The world is no stranger to the CCP's aggression, whether it's their religious persecution campaigns or their blatant intimidation tactics. We see the CCP's playbook everywhere, from the Taiwan Straits to the South China Sea. But today we must shine a light on one of the most enduring tragedies of our time: the CCP's brutal and ongoing subjugation of the Tibetan people. Perhaps the most egregious example of the CCP's efforts of such is their attempt to choose the next successor to the Dalai Lama. It is a national security issue. The CCP has spent decades trying to destroy Tibetan Buddhists. In fact, they killed many Buddhist monks in their takeover of the Tibetan territory. Yet they now claim the authority to choose the next spiritual leader of the Tibetan people. Let me be clear. This is not just wrong, not just morally wrong, but it's an insult to the religious freedom of peoples everywhere. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama stated unequivocally, the authority regarding his reincarnation or rebirth is a matter reserved exclusively to the Tibetan Buddhist leaders and the Tibetan people. It is not a decision for Beijing. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has made remarkable contributions to society through his advocacy for compassion, nonviolence, and religious harmony. Last June, we celebrated His Holiness' 90th birthday here in the Capitol, alongside many members, including Ranking Member Meeks. 2 years ago, I traveled to Dharamshala in India to meet with His Holiness. He told me that he would not be reborn in China, that he would be reborn in freedom. And I thought that was a very profound statement. The CCP, however, sent a letter to our delegation warning us not to attend, not to go to visit His Holiness. But we did not let them intimidate us then, and we will not let them intimidate us now. I presented His Holiness with wind chimes that play America the Beautiful. I told him that while the wind cannot be seen, it is a powerful force that is always present. And that is what the United States must be for Tibet here and now, a powerful, ever-present force for freedom and a voice for freedom. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I believe we should pass this resolution to show the world that the flame of Tibetan liberty will never be extinguished. The world is watching. The Tibetan people I know are watching this today, and I guarantee the Chinese Communist Party is watching here today, and I urge passage of my amendment. And with that, I yield back.
Ranking Member Meeks is recognized.
Thank you. I strongly support this measure by Mr. McCaul. You know, as he indicated, I had the great honor of traveling with him to India in 2024 to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It was powerful to see his grace, his warmth, his optimism, despite the constant repression and harassment he and his fellow Tibetans faced from the People's Republic of China. It was one of those occasions where you could feel the presence of a man who was full of wisdom, and you could feel his presence as he entered the room. And for me, in my experience, actually, it was similar to what I felt when I was in the room with Mr. Nelson Mandela. it's one of the highlights of my career in Washington, D.C., just listening to his words, his thoughts, his vision for the future, and his determination not to allow the CCP to overcome the wisdom and the future of the Tibetan people. His Holiness turning 90 last year. You know, there were, of course, growing concerns and questions around his succession. We know that Beijing will try to intervene and try to co-opt Tibetan Buddhism for its own political causes. And that's why the United States must stand with the Tibetan people in their fight for religious freedom and the preservation of their cultural and linguistic identity. This resolution rightly condemns Beijing's repression of the Tibetan people, calls on Beijing to stop interfering in Tibetan Buddhism, and expresses support for the autonomy and cultural identity of Tibetans. I strongly support and thank Representative McCaul for bringing this bill forward, and I call on all of my colleagues to do the same so that the Tibetan people know that the United States of America is solidly in their support and have their back. And with that, I yield back.
Ranking member yields back. Do any other members seek recognition? I'm going to recognize myself. I want to thank my colleague, Chairman Emeritus McCaul, as well, for leading this resolution today to honor His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama on his 90th birthday this past year. For over 6 decades in exile, His Holiness has been a voice for the Tibetan people as they resist the Chinese Communist Party, their campaign to erase their identity through forced sanitization. Now, despite Beijing's best efforts to suppress the Tibetan language and their religion and their culture, the Dalai Lama has kept the flame of the Tibetan people and their heritage alive worldwide through a peaceful resistance that can only be described as inspiring. And so I would like to say I support this resolution, and again, I thank you for your work on this. Do any other members seek recognition? Seeing none. The committee will move to consideration of amendments. Do any members wish to offer an amendment? Being no further amendments, I move that the committee reports H.Res. 515 as amended to the House with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to.